Hello and welcome to the Enquiry Podcast. This is a place where we are going to dive into everything that it is to live your life as medicine. So how to follow the breadcrumbs and the signposts in order to be guided to your purpose and to your freedom. How to use your life's challenges as the opportunities that they are for your own healing and growth. My name is Nerida Mills. I am your host. I am a psychosomatic practitioner. I am a coach, and I am absolutely thrilled to be here. I am very excited to get this party started. So let's get going. Welcome everybody to this episode of the Enquiry Podcast. I am so excited to have my dear friend Joanne Omer joining us today. Myself and Joanne both studied our Masters of Psychosomatic Therapy together a couple of years ago now, and went deep into the world of our own physicality and one another's for a good 10 days. So I am very excited to have a chat with you because I know the medicine that you bring into this world is just absolutely phenomenal. So what I would love to start with is if you would love to share what your mission is in life and what you're currently, or how you're currently expressing that.
Yes. Well, my mission is to empower women to live abundant, fulfilled, and aligned lives. And I do that through creating communities of women that create communities of women doing the same thing.
I love that. Because, I mean, then you've got that ripple effect, right?
Yes.
Whilst really honouring the requirements of holding that space. I think if we go to, if it gets too much too quick, then we crumble and then nobody's holding anything for anybody. So sharing that load is such a beautiful model around how to do this.
Yes. And, a term that came to me recently, and I actually wrote about it in my book, The Sovereign Woman's Way, is the term heterarchy. Ooh. And it was something that I hadn't heard of before, but it speaks to where it's not a hierarchy. So I don't want to be anyone's guru. I certainly don't, but I want everyone to be their own guru.
Yeah.
But in the space of being around other gurus amongst yourselves, you discover who you are. And then you create little pods of communities that all work autonomously in their sovereignty, but still together, if that makes sense, where there's nobody who's necessarily the head, but everybody works together for the same purpose, which I truly believe is for us to all awaken to our divine essence, who we truly are inside of us, and embody that and bring that to the world.
Love that. And can you speak into a little bit around your methodology, or because I love the way that you do this and the offerings that you bring. So tell us.
So the methodology, well, I have a modality that I created, and that is called KunYin. And Kun stands for the Kundalini, the life force energy that moves through us all, and Yin being the feminine aspect of the yin yang. And so it is a embodiment practice that focuses on body, mind, and soul, that encourages women to come back home to themselves, to the wisdom that is in their own body, and gives them an opportunity to express whatever is present for them in any given moment through their body, in a way that so often in everyday life we try to find words to express how we're feeling. And what I experience with so many women, and especially women that are called to my work, is that they often feel blocked here in their throat. They often feel like they can't express who they truly are for the fear of being judged or ridiculed or being put down or being too much. And so I create spaces where women can come home to how they're truly feeling and be able to express who they are or what they're feeling in any moment through movement.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. So I want to follow the thread in this, right? So I get all like curious. So why movement for you? What was it about your journey that activated the desire or the propulsion into this form of medicine? Where was I like to call them signposts, right? These experiences that we have that the universe goes, hey, you've got to look at this thing over here. And sometimes they can be quite full on and sometimes they can be a bit more subtle. But what was that for you?
Thank you for asking. For me, it was a moment of connection with myself and my body. I was on the floor at the Ritz-Carlton in Maui in 2015, and I found myself in a seated position, just slowly moving my body in a really slow circle. And it was in the opening of my hips, in the opening of the stretch in my inner thigh, that I had an emotional release. And in that moment, I cried and I cried and I cried. And I didn't even know what I was crying about. I had been working in corporate for 15 years. I was a project manager in IT. I was living a very achievement-driven life, focused on achievement and, making money and doing. And in that moment of being, in that moment of connection, something inside of me awoken. And it was connection with a part of myself that I didn't know. And the feeling, the tears that I was crying were not even, I couldn't even put a label on it to describe, well, what was it? Was it sadness? Was it happiness? Was it joy? Was it relief? I don't know. But I knew that I had to find out more. And I knew that the feeling that I felt, it felt good. And I thought to myself, as I went every day, because it was a 6-day program, and it wasn't about embodiment. This was just one piece of it. But as I went through, I discovered this part of me. And I was like, oh my God, there you are, Joanne. There you are. And I thought, every woman needs to feel this. Every woman needs to feel this way. And that was back in 2015. So now when this is being recorded, it's 2025. It's 10 years later. And I didn't know how I was going to. I had no idea how I was going to help every woman feel this way. But I followed, as I say, I followed the breadcrumbs of my delight.
I love that. I use breadcrumbs in a similar way. It's such a universal thing though, right? It is like life and our soul leaves these breadcrumbs. It's like follow that thread. If you can follow these little signs from, your higher self or from life, then you are guided through your passions, through your curiosities, through your language into truth.
Yeah.
But we've got to follow the thread because the surface level's a bit crazy.
Yeah. So I just did. I followed the breadcrumbs of my delight. And that led me to, the more I moved, I realized the more I moved energy and emotions through my body, because the tears that I realized later, that the tears that I was crying was a suppressed emotion, the emotion that I'd suppressed from a little girl who wasn't allowed to cry. Because, often, and so many women that I speak to get told, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? Or, oh, shush, don't be so silly. Oh, don't be ridiculous. Little girls should be seen and not heard. Those kind of things that reinforce that our emotion and what we are feeling is not valid or it's not okay or unwelcome. And so I as I started to move my body in different ways, I started to access different emotions in my body. So the first emotion that I discovered was the sadness, after as I realized it was sadness, mixed with a bit of joy and relief, And then I discovered, once that sadness was gone, I was like, I can actually find pleasure in my body. And I was like, this feels good. And so I found that part of myself that gave myself permission to feel good.
Yeah.
And then after that, I discovered the fire, which is that part of me, that little girl that got told to shut down or got told to be quiet, the rage that she felt, the
Yeah.
the absolute rage and injustice of it all. And so I learned, how could I use my muscles and how could I use my body in a gentle way to connect to that fiery energy and to be able to move that through my body. So as I did, and I started to sort of unravel all these, because as you would know, like, the body is the history book of everything that we've ever experienced in our life. So as I'm moving that through my cells, what's happening is I'm becoming more and more open and I'm becoming more and more intuitive. So as I start moving my body, I'm starting to get divine messages. And as you said, maybe from my higher self, maybe from our creator, the universe, whatever you want to call it. Right?
Yeah.
And I started getting all these downloads of inspiration, of information, and my creativity was unleashed because, of course, we hold in our sacral, where we hold a lot of our sexual energy, is where our creativity also lies. So when that gets cleared of shame, of the emotions, the stuff that we're feeling, what's going to be there is your natural creativity.
Yeah.
So my intuition was opened up. I went on, discovered different healing techniques and modalities. And I was also very masterful at my mind. So I learned how to discipline my mind to achieve and stand guard at the entrance of my mind and know about belief systems and so on. But then I was more curious, and then I got led into the psychosomatics. And that's when I was like, I need to know more about this body.
Yeah. Give me everything.
I need to know more about this body and the wisdom that she holds. And that's how I created KunYin. Because it's really a combination of all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I think some of the things that I just want to circle back to in a way is, following the breadcrumbs of your delight, I think, is such a powerful commitment to self, because so often a lot of people's healing journeys start by following the breadcrumbs to their pain. And it's not about one being right or wrong, but it is really important to highlight that both are available, right? We can also move through this by leaning into that which we desire rather than that which we want to avoid, which is very, very cool. And then the other part I wanted to highlight is that sort of it's like a 3-step kind of awakening that you went through, right? Which is the awareness and the lived experience of sensation again. And then moving into your power to create through awakening your desire, true desire, and that sacral energy. And then that fire of my I am as well, and like how that drives. And I find it interesting as well, because rage is such an interesting emotion for me. I find it really fascinating because it can, I kind of connect it with Kali. She's the destroyer. She will burn the ground in which you walk. And I used to label my expression of Kali as my banshee, because I sound like a fucking banshee when I'm in her. But it's very interesting to pay attention to what activates that part of self and what intention is that activation, right? So for me, it was really around feeling when I felt disrespected to a degree at which I no longer had any control, and it just kept coming in waves. Kali would come out, or my banshee would come out, in order to protect and to recalibrate the balance of power. And so find that fire energy, that rage. It's the same thing, right? It's to rebalance the balance of power within our life. And a lot of us are living life in a disempowered state. and then wondering why we're so pissed off all of the time or so rageful. It's like that rage is designed to bring you into your power and then direct that with those breadcrumbs of delight into how to actually fuel movement in that direction, I think.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh, there's so much in what you just said. There is so much there. So, where do I even begin with that? Like in terms of my rage, what I noticed, and it wasn't that I was present to it at the time. It's only upon reflection that I have this wisdom, because at the time it was just present in my body. When a certain song would come on, my body would respond in a certain kind of way that felt good. And so for me in a class, it can be muscular exertion. It can be pressing down. It can be holding in a deep squat. It can be slowing down so much that you feel that burn and then moving that through the hips and up through the solar plexus and out, into the chest and then into the flick kind of thing. So just like feeling that energy. But for me, my body is extremely flexible. So I'm a very flexible being. And my personality can be very flexible as well.
Of course.
There is a point where I can be overly accommodating, overly flexible, that then I reach a threshold, right? And this is what I see happens with so many women. It's like we can be flexible. We call ourselves psycho bitches, right? But in fact, is it true? I mean, I call myself a psycho bitch. I mean, there might be some of your audience that actually can relate to that too. Maybe she's a banshee or whatever she is, right? It's like you're actually not a psycho. We just don't know how to set boundaries. We just don't know how to set boundaries because we are overly accommodating, or they don't speak, or we spoke and we're not heard. And we reach a threshold. And that's when the fire comes out.
Yeah.
And so I started to become really, really associated, not associated as in connected to how that moves through my body. So now I have awareness of when that arises. So now I can respond to what is going on inside of me versus reacting to it. Now, there are still moments where I react, right? I'm a human being. I am not anywhere near perfect. But I'm learning, and this is where I think so many of us really, shoot ourselves in the foot, so to speak, because we expect that we're just because you've got an awareness that we're going to be perfect and it's never going to happen again.
Yeah.
And it's about having compassion and awareness of when it arises.
Yeah. It's a practice, right?
Mastery. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Journey of mastery.
Yeah. So I would love to know, if you're willing to share, what was and you don't have to go into more detail than what you feel is appropriate, but, obviously our childhood experiences are the things that set up these patterns in our life, and the patterns then kind of guide us towards that which we're here to give. So what was it for you that was set up in your early childhood that was the activator to you going down the depths of the different elements that have now played out in order for you to be able to do the medicine that you do? Because you've touched on a couple of different points, right? I mean, creating a business structure the way that you have, you can't do that without a mind the way that your mind works, right? With the project management and that sort of element. So I think a lot of people kind of skip the building blocks that actually enable them to put it all together, and they just see, I've had this awakening and it's from that awakening that was the medicine, and they kind of miss those earlier stages in acknowledging the benefit and requirement of it. So I'm kind of looking for the pieces, I guess, because I'm sure there's a couple that have enabled that journey for you, or enforced that journey is probably more accurate.
Can you ask me again? Can you ask me again? Because I need to process what you.
Yeah, no, that's okay. There was a lot in the question.
Yes.
So I'm looking for is the experiences in childhood, or maybe the agreements that you made with yourself in childhood that led to all of the building, like the different building blocks that have come together in order for your medicine to take hold.
Okay. Yeah. So the first one would have to be emotional expression. So, and I have no reluctance in sharing about my childhood journey. In my book, it's all based upon that, because I've had to go that deep to really understand myself, to be able to embody new ways of being that I wish to express in the world, right? So number one is self-expression. So as I spoke to, little girls should be seen and not heard. Stop.
Yeah.
The inability or the feeling of not feeling safe to express was a huge catalyst, because once emotional expression is released, it's like you just create so much spaciousness for your creativity, for who you truly are to shine through, rather than the next part, which is be the good girl.
Oh,
right? Yeah. So be a good girl, be nice.
Yeah.
Be nice. Oh, don't say that. Like, oh, don't be like that. Or talk to so-and-so, or go give so-and-so a hug, or go and kiss so-and-so, a family member, hello. Like, I would never, ever do that to my little niece now. Like, I would never make her or force her to do anything that she didn't want to do, especially with a body boundary or anything like that. So, being able to, not having the knowledge or the recognition of my own body boundaries, and also my own way of being. And what I discovered through my own journey, and I write about this in my book, is this pendulum effect when you are little and you have an experience. So for me, it was be a good girl, right? So you got to do this and do what you're told and follow the expectations of your culture, your conditioning. Be a good girl. So what I found is that I was in my life being either compliant,
yeah,
or rebellious.
Totally rebellious. Yeah.
So there was this pendulum that would speak.
Yeah.
Now, neither of those was my true authentic self, because it was coming from a reaction from a childhood belief, trauma, experience that was filtered through my little 7-year-old, 5-year-old lens.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until that I could see that my whole entire life had been built upon my conditioning. And in fact, you talked about awakening before. I had a big catalyst for the next evolution, my next birth into the world, which was my book, The Sovereign Woman's Way, was a Kundalini awakening that I had in 2022. That awakened my Kundalini, that had me see, because it had me go and follow the breadcrumbs of my delight, because I had these euphoric, blissful, beautiful experiences that I didn't understand, and I wanted to know more about them. And that called me to go on a journey, which I had to, in order to do that, I needed to deconstruct my conditioning. I needed to deconstruct all that I thought I was. I questioned everything. I even questioned my marriage that I had been in for, I think at the time it was like 28 years, or I've been in my relationship for 21 years now, married to my husband, but it was 28 years at the time. And I even questioned that, like, did I choose this? And now, of course, I'm still married. I realized I did, but I also got to see all of the conditioning.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And I think, what you're talking about in regards to the awakening, I think it's really important to just highlight for people that as we have these, really often quite somatic experiences of what is possible for ourselves, that within that there is a dying off process that also takes place, and that dying off process is not only normal but necessary, and that you're not broken in the die off. There's nothing wrong with you in the die off. You are literally allowing the old parts that you've now outgrown to be where they need to be, which is in the past, right? And unfortunately, I see too many times where people are in that die-off process, or into the void of the nothingness, the in-between land. And they think that it's because the old parts are either wrong, right, or the old self is wrong, or that there is something fundamentally wrong with them. And I think that none of those things are accurate. So it's really important to come into those spaces, even though, you know, there's a space for feeling like shit, and there's a space for feeling like a victim in it all, and it's not fair, and, you know, all of that is required. But the overarching understanding or overarching experience of it, the invitation, I guess, is to really lean into that, recognizing that this past version of you has been perfect to set you up to where you are right now. And it's one of the things I talk about a lot. Like, I am so grateful, so, like, you can't even understand how appreciative I am of my past versions of self, because, you know, they're the ones that really walked through some significant hot fucking fires, and, you know, like mud up to my nostrils, and, you know, just mucky stuff, and had the courage to continue to walk. And so it would be remiss, I think, to look at that version just because she went through shit and then be punishing of self in that. Like, I just want to say thank you. You know, like, fuck me, thank you.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. I'm with you, sister. I am so grateful for every single, not only version of me, but every single experience that I ever had that made me into the woman that I am today.
Yeah.
You know, in going through that process of understanding, I got to see so much. You know, like,
Yeah.
I had this experience with my mum, and I discovered this as I was actually leading a program. I was leading the Sovereign Woman's Way program. And I had this moment of realization where I just burst into tears. Like, as I was sharing, it was totally, it just came. The insight just came to me, because I was having this interaction with my mum where she can be chaotic at times. Like, she gets really stressed and her voice rises, and and my nervous system goes into like, you know,
and, childhood, right?
yeah. And I go straight back to that little girl, and I realized that. And then I was actually sitting with that experience, being like, well, if my mum was chaotic at that time, how did I have to be? What did that make me? And what I realized is that in any dynamic, there's always a polarity. There's polarity exists in the world, right? So whilst she was chaotic, I had to be calm.
And structured, I imagine.
And grounded.
Yeah.
So I realized that the beauty of the gift that she gave me by me having to learn how to be that. Because if it was not for that, I wouldn't have been able to be present for my dad when he had a heart attack in my arms and was rushed to hospital and then passed away 24 hours later. I wouldn't have been able to honor my mother-in-law's last wishes and help to wash her body in a traditional Islamic ceremony after she had passed. So all of those things, and those two moments that I had in my life, they are the biggest gifts I've ever. Like, they just fill my heart with so much love that I could have the privilege of being there in those moments for those two very special people in my life. And if my mum had been any different, I wouldn't be the woman I am today.
Yeah, 100%.
So I am with you 100%. Those versions of ourselves that we created that maybe at some point we may have shamed, or for those of people who are listening who might be in the thick of the void right now, the best thing that they can do is really just be with it first. Be honest with yourself about themselves, about what are they really experiencing right now in this moment, and without having to change it. And that can be the most difficult thing. And I learned this recently from one of my teachers, Sri Preetha Ji, who's the founder of the One Movement, and they're from India. And they were telling us about, the levels of awareness. The first level of awareness is being with what is. The second level is being with what is in the moment without having to change it.
Mm.
And the third step is being with what is and knowing that outside is not responsible for what's going on in here.
Mm.
So it's like radical responsibility.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And compassion for yourself in whatever you're dealing with. Because it all starts here. But we think that, I've got to have compassion for that person. But that's conditioning and that's programming.
Well, and the reality is that we can only ever have any form of emotion for anybody outside of ourselves to the same degree at which we have it for ourselves. And so if you're self-loathing and self-berating and self-punishing all of the time, and you have these really unrealistic standards of how you should be able to show up and live life being an actual human being, right? We have these, I think people have these superhuman expectations. When you actually break it down, most expectations or standards that people hold for themselves, they're so unrealistic that they laugh, because it's just like nobody could actually live to that standard. So, I think there's a really big opportunity to come back into like humble humanness and really like be with yourself and love yourself in that space. And that is the pathway, as you've got this lived experience of, right? That is the pathway to then be able to give on such a grand scale, because then you have the ability to hold that energy because you hold your own.
100%. And we circle back to when we went back to anger. It's like being able to be with your emotions, whatever it is, and own it. I'm angry right now. I need to go and move that energy. I'm sad right now. I need to go and move that energy. I'm joyful right now. I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to move that energy. However, and I feel like that for me, that was why that was like my entry point is to like, firstly, we've got to own ourselves and our humanity, our humanness without shame. And you asked me about what were the building blocks. Shame was another one I really feel. It's like the shame of being too much, the shame of being outspoken, the shame of blah, 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 that really needed to be like.
Yeah, it's often the case with people I find that end up teaching self-expression. They have a lived experience of shame for the fullness of themselves.
Yeah.
So it's like the remedy is to step into all of who you are. And then, of course, naturally, we want to share the gift of that because it's so empowering.
Yeah. And then to find the harmony in it. Because as you evolve and as you grow, and as I've gone on in my journey, I know that now not everybody needs to know how I'm feeling. The most important thing is that I know how I'm feeling. I know how to express it. I know how to move through it. And I really could give zero beep as to anyone gets it or not anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting point, right? Because you've got on social media, there is an abundance of sharing of all of the things. But if you actually drill down, when, I can't call it like oversharing is not the right word, but there's leaky energy that is apparent. So when we have accepted and owned the fullness of who we are for ourselves, you don't find that leaky energy that needs validation from other people for one's own experience. It's not required, like what you're saying. There's certain people that you let into that world, but everybody doesn't need to be part of it because everybody doesn't mean anything to you necessarily. You know what I mean?
100%. And I got this actually when I was on my awakening journey, and I came back from having that experience, and I said to my husband, I've got to go away for 3 months. And I went and I traveled overseas, and then I came back and I did it again the next year for 4 months. Right. But I remember being in Sardinia and being at a resort and listening to Osho. And he said something to the effect of, and it was I don't know these exact words, but the energy behind it was, if you were going to care about the good things that people say to you, you're going to care about the shit things they say to you.
Mm.
So he said, so when people say to me, oh, you are so amazing, he says, I know. And it's like, that might occur as arrogant to some people, but what matters, it doesn't matter what you think of me.
Yeah.
What matters is what I think of me.
Right. And I think it's beautiful that he knows he's amazing.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
whatever it is, I also get that, the law of polarity would state that for every person that loves you, there'll be a person that hates you.
Absolutely.
So be it. And
someone else is going to come out and be like, I think you're a total fraud.
Yep. And thank you. Right? So it was like, that was, for me, was so liberating in giving up the ideal that I wanted to be liked or appreciated, or giving a shit about how many likes I have on social media or how many comments I have or whatever. I could care less.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I had an experience 2021 now, where I had a cyst grow on my left ovary, unbeknownst to me. I'd never had a cyst before, and it burst. And through the bursting of the cyst, because my ovary had floated its way to my bowel, it actually it burst through a vein and created internal bleeding. So I didn't know what it felt like to have a cyst burst on my ovary, so I wasn't aware of the symptomology I was having. It just felt like I was in cervical shock, which I had experienced before. Not recommended. It's really shit. And I certainly didn't understand that the symptoms that I was having were beyond what you would normally experience with an ovarian cyst burst. And so anyway, long story short, I ended up being misdiagnosed for a long time. And eventually they found out that I was internal bleeding. And then I got rushed into emergency surgery. So I lost a number of litres of blood, and they were like, we've got to do something about this now. So when I came out of that surgery, that's probably as close as I've been to like a near-death experience. There were times where my body really took over, and it felt nearly like a medicine journey, where my mind and my body were separated in a sense, and the body was going into all sorts of different expressions of shock. And but of course I didn't have any understanding around what was going on, and part of my brain was like, are you making this shit up? You know how you always question that? Yeah. So there was that element in it as well. Anyway, as I came out of the surgery, there was a couple of things that were really fundamental. I had 3 messages out of the other side of that experience. And one of them, which is what made me laugh as I came to, was that you don't take other people's opinion with you. And it was just so locked in that I woke up pissing myself laughing, because so much of my life up until that point had been to try and please, or to try and validate, or to try and ensure acceptance, or whatever it was, right? And so there was all this energy and effort going into how am I being perceived. And it was the last nail in the coffin, I think, of allowing myself to just be completely invisible. And it's, moving into that space for me allows the freedom of the fullness of expression. Because if I'm not impacted by your perception of me, then I'm not going to contort my behavior or adjust how I'm showing up in order to be seen in a certain light. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's, I 100% agree with what you've just said.
Yeah, I love that. That we've all got to do what we need to do in order to be able to find that level of self-expression, whether that means sometimes for a period of separating from or moving, not separation as such, but creating distance between ourselves and others. And I think sometimes that is like, I needed to do that in my own journey in order for me. And that's why I needed to go away.
Travel. Yeah. It's consolidation of self, right?
Oh my gosh. And it's so funny. Ever since then, my husband was watching TV the other night and he's like, Joe, come and look at this. Women solo traveling is a thing now. He's like, you started that like 2 years ago, because for me, it was like unheard of that a married woman would say to her husband, I'm going away for 3 months.
Yeah. See ya.
In my family, like in Italian heritage and background, and my husband's from the Middle East, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So I had to really go against a lot of the ingrained patterns of behavior, belief systems that I've been brought up with in order to do that. But I couldn't discover who I was here.
Yeah.
I needed to have space between me and any other influence. It just needed to be me.
So that is a perfect segue to my final question for you, which is that there's a common challenge that anybody who steps into the public eye is going to face, right? Which is the edge around really, truly allowing yourself to be seen in all of who you are. So I would love to hear what that journey was like for you. What was that specific edge for you? And what was it that really propelled you over it or overcome it?
That's a really good question. I'm feeling like a little bit of emotion coming up at the awareness as it's arising. Because I really I'm really okay with being seen. Like if you see I've published some of my dances, and that's probably the most vulnerable expression of myself that you could do, like in my world, of sharing a dance of my soul, basically. When we move what's in our heart, what's in our body, what's in our soul, it's naked, it's vulnerable. And so I have no problems in sharing that. And I feel like the way that I got to, and so that's my vehicle, the way that I got there was through radical self-acceptance. Like really, like me being owning fully and completely all those aspects of myself. The parts that I've shamed, the parts that I made wrong, the parts that I tried to hide, and me owning all of those parts of me. And so owning myself, and owning the emotions was a big part of it, because that's how it manifests in the world, right?
Yeah.
It's how it shows up. And so, yeah, I really do feel like it was that journey of like just radical self-acceptance and self-ownership and owning and having, that's not an easy freaking thing to do.
No, there's courage.
Owning your shit, owning when I lose it, owning when I'm impatient, owning when I burn people with my words and my fire, and then having to come back and go, you know what, I am so sorry. I lost my shit, and I'm taking responsibility for the impact of what goes on over there too. Yeah. So there's a lot there, but it really does it all starts here.
100%.
Yeah.
Oh, that is absolutely beautiful. I would love for you to share, please, how people can find you, follow you, do your stuff.
Well, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. It's Joanne Omer, or my website, joanneomer.com, or my KunYin website if you're interested in, if you're a feminine being interested in learning how to express yourself and discover the wisdom of your own beautiful body, at kunyin.com.au, and that's KUNYIN.com.au. Or if you're one of these that like to go on the journey more, perhaps intimately, then my book is available on Amazon, The Sovereign Woman's Way. So there are all many different ways that you can connect with me.
I love that. Well, look, thank you so much, Joanne, for spending the time with us today and sharing your gorgeous wisdom and all of yourself. Very much appreciate you and the work that you're doing in this world, and also the work that you've done on yourself in order to make that possible. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been so beautiful. Thank you. And I got something out of this call for myself.
Excellent.
That's
the idea.
Okay,
so that's it from us. Thank you so much for joining us. It has been my pleasure to have you here, and I just want to acknowledge you for spending the time to explore how to have more influence on your own life and be able to create the life that it is that you love. If you'd like to take this work further, you can do so by jumping onto my website at www.neridamills.com/masterclass and join me for my upcoming free 4-week masterclass, Time to Thrive, how to utilize your life as medicine to thrive. That's it from us. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.